If your mother still calls you 5 times a day to check if you've eaten, picks out your clothes at age 30, or has never let you make a single decision without her input, you might be dealing with the most psychologically damaging type of parent. And this isn't love, it's control disguised as care. What you're about to learn will completely change how you see certain parenting behaviors. We're diving into one of the darkest concepts in psychology, the devouring mother. This isn't just about overprotective parents. This is about a psychological pattern so toxic that it can destroy a person's ability to function as an independent adult. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how this happens, why some mothers become this way, and most importantly, how to recognize if you've been affected by this pattern. Let me start with Sarah's story. Sarah is 28 years old and has never lived alone. Not because she can't afford it, but because her mother convinced her that the world is too dangerous. When Sarah got her first job, her mother would call the office multiple times a day, claiming it was just to check in. When Sarah started dating, her mother would show up unannounced at restaurants, saying she was just worried about Sarah's safety. When Sarah tried to move out at 25, her mother had a complete breakdown, threatening to hurt herself if Sarah abandoned her. Today, Sarah still lives at home, still asks permission to go out with friends, and has never made a major life decision without her mother's approval. Sarah's mother isn't evil or malicious. In her mind, she's being the perfect mother, protecting her daughter from all harm. But what she's actually doing is something much darker. She's psychologically devouring her child. The term devouring mother comes from Carl Jung, one of the most important psychologists in history. Jung noticed a pattern in his patients, adults who seemed to have had loving mothers but were completely unable to function independently. These people struggled with relationships, couldn't make decisions, and often felt like children trapped in adult bodies. Jung realized their mothers had been consuming their psychological development like a python slowly digesting its prey. Jung built on ideas from his mentor, Sigmund Freud, who first wrote about how mothers could psychologically damage their children through excessive attachment. Freud called this the phallic mother, a mother who refuses to let her child psychologically separate from her. But Jung took this further, describing how some mothers literally devour their children's souls, consuming their ability to become independent adults. But here's what makes this so twisted. The devouring mother genuinely believes she's showing love. She'll tell everyone how much she cares about her child, how she's just being protective, how she's the only one who truly understands what's best for them. And society often praises these mothers as devoted and caring. That's what makes this pattern so dangerous and so hard to escape. The devouring mother operates through something psychologists call enmeshment. This is when the boundaries between mother and child completely disappear. The mother doesn't see her child as a separate person with their own thoughts, feelings, and desires. Instead, she sees them as an extension of herself, something that exists to fulfill her emotional needs. Think of it like this. A healthy mother is like a gardener who plants a seed, waters it, gives it sunlight, and then steps back to let it grow into whatever plant it's meant to become. The devouring mother is like someone who keeps the plant in a tiny pot, never letting it grow bigger, constantly pruning it to stay exactly the way she wants it. She might tell herself she's taking good care of the plant, but she's actually slowly killing it. Dr. Kenneth Adams, a leading expert on enmeshment, found that children of devouring mothers show specific patterns. They have trouble with boundaries, struggle to identify their own emotions, and often feel guilty for wanting independence. They might be high achievers because the mother pushes them to excel, but they're achieving for mom's approval, not their own satisfaction. Jordan Peterson, the famous psychology professor, talks about this pattern differently but reaches the same conclusion. Peterson explains that these mothers prevent their children from facing life's challenges and growing from them. He calls it rescuing someone from the consequences of their own actions. When mothers constantly save their children from every problem, they rob them of the chance to develop strength and confidence. Peterson argues that this creates what he calls Extended adolescence. Adults who never learn to take responsibility for their own lives. The devouring mother uses several psychological weapons, and they're all disguised as love. First is emotional incest. This sounds disturbing because it is. The mother treats her child like an emotional spouse, sharing inappropriate details about her life, expecting the child to manage her emotions and making the child feel responsible for her happiness. The child learns that their job is to take care of mom's feelings, not develop their own identity. Second is manufactured helplessness. The devouring mother constantly tells her child that the world is dangerous, that other people can't be trusted, that only mom truly cares about them. She creates a false reality where the child believes they need constant protection. When the child tries to be independent, she'll point to every small problem as proof that they can't handle life alone. Third is guilt manipulation. If the child tries to set boundaries or become independent, the mother acts like she's being personally attacked. She might cry, threaten self-harm, or remind the child of all the sacrifices she's made. The message is clear. Wanting independence means you're selfish and ungrateful. Fourth is identity theft. The devouring mother doesn't let her child develop their own interests, opinions, or personality. She decides what they should like, who they should be friends with, what career they should pursue. The child grows up not knowing who they really are because they've never been allowed to find out. The psychological damage from this is severe and long-lasting. Adults who were raised by devouring mothers often struggle with what psychologists call learned helplessness. They've been taught that they can't handle life's challenges, so they don't even try. They might have successful careers but feel like frauds. They might desperately want relationships but sabotage them because they don't know how to be intimate without losing themselves. Dr. Alice Miller, author of The Drama of the Gifted Child, explains that these adults often become people pleasers who can't say no. They've learned that their value comes from meeting other people's needs, not from being themselves. They might seem confident on the outside, but inside they feel empty and lost. Research shows that children of enmeshed mothers have higher rates of anxiety disorders, depression, and relationship problems. A study published in the Journal of Family Psychology found that adults from enmeshed families had significantly more difficulty with emotional regulation and forming healthy romantic relationships. Here's what makes this even more complex. The devouring mother often becomes this way because of her own psychological wounds. She might have been abandoned as a child and now clings to her own child to avoid feeling that pain again. She might have an unhappy marriage and uses her child to fill the emotional void. She might have narcissistic traits and sees her child as a reflection of herself rather than a separate person. Freud would say this mother never properly resolved her own childhood issues. In Freudian terms, she's stuck in an infantile state herself, unable to love in a mature way. Instead of giving love that helps her child grow, she gives possessive love that keeps her child dependent. Freud believed that healthy psychological development requires separation from the mother, and when that doesn't happen, both mother and child remain psychologically stunted. Understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it helps explain why these patterns are so hard to break. The mother isn't consciously trying to harm her child. She's trying to heal her own wounds, but she's using her child as medicine, and that's psychologically toxic. So how do you know if you were raised by a devouring mother? Here are the warning signs. You have trouble making decisions without asking others for input. You feel guilty when you do things just for yourself. You struggle to know what you actually want versus what others expect from you. You have a hard time with conflict because you've learned that disagreeing with someone means losing their love. You might find yourself in relationships where you lose your identity, becoming whatever the other person wants you to be. You might excel at taking care of others but struggle to take care of yourself. You might feel like you're constantly performing rather than just being yourself. If this sounds familiar, the first step is recognizing that what happened to you wasn't normal love, it was psychological consumption. This recognition can be painful because it means acknowledging that the person who claimed to love you most was actually harming you. But this recognition is also the first step toward freedom. Recovery involves learning to set boundaries, which might be the hardest thing you've ever done. The devouring mother will fight these boundaries because they threaten her control. She might escalate her guilt trips, claim you're being cruel, or even threaten to cut you off completely. This is called an extinction burst. When someone's control tactics stop working, they often get more extreme before they give up. You'll need to learn to tolerate the guilt that comes with choosing yourself. The guilt isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you were programmed to prioritize someone else's needs over your own. Healthy guilt happens when you actually hurt someone. This guilt happens when you stop letting someone hurt you. Working with a therapist who understands enmeshment can be crucial. They can help you identify where you end and other people begin. They can help you discover who you really are underneath all the programming. This process takes time because you're essentially rebuilding your entire sense of self. The good news is that recovery is possible. Adults who break free from devouring mothers often describe it like waking up from a long dream. They start making choices based on their own values instead of fear and guilt. They develop genuine relationships instead of codependent ones. They discover interests and talents they never knew they had because no one ever asked them what they wanted. Some people worry that setting boundaries means they don't love their mother anymore. But real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your identity. Real love celebrates the other person's individuality rather than trying to control it. When you set healthy boundaries, you're not abandoning your mother. You're refusing to participate in a dynamic that's harmful to both of you. The devouring mother pattern often continues across generations. Daughters of devouring mothers sometimes become devouring mothers themselves because it's the only model of motherhood they know. Breaking this cycle isn't just about healing yourself. It's about protecting future generations from this psychological prison. This is why understanding the devouring mother is so important. It's not about blaming parents or dwelling on the past. It's about recognizing destructive patterns so we can choose something healthier. It's about understanding that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's need disguised as care. If you recognized yourself in this video, know that your feelings are valid. What you experienced was real psychological harm. Even if it was wrapped in the language of love and protection, you deserve to grow up with a mother who saw you as a separate person worthy of respect and independence. You deserve to develop your own identity without guilt or manipulation. But also know that your story doesn't end with your childhood. You have the power to rewrite the script, to discover who you really are underneath all the programming, and to create the kind of relationships you actually want. It won't be easy, but it's possible, and you're worth the effort. Hit that subscribe button if you want to learn more about dark psychology patterns that shape our lives.